Welcome, everybody, to the It's Never Too Late show. I'm Suzanne Oshima, and I'm a life and love transformational coach at Your Next Amazing Story. I'm so excited because today we have a very special guest, Dr. Duana Welch, and she's the author of the Love Factually series. And today we're talking about I'm confused, he loves me, but he pushes me away. How many of you ladies has that happened to? I think we all have. But before we jump into the reason why some men do this, Duane, I would love for you to tell our audience a little bit about you and what prompted you to write this Love Factually book.
Well, as you know, I've got 7 books out now, and one of them is just about this topic. And what prompted me to do this is it was and remains one of the most frequent issues that clients approach me for. They don't come to me saying, oh, there's an attachment style issue. They come to me saying, for some reason, I'm more in love than my partner is, or I feel like they don't love me as much as I love them, and I'm confused all the time, and there's not the commitment level I thought there would be, or we signed the papers, but it doesn't feel like real commitment. People are confused, and it turns out to be about this topic. And since I had had so many problems with this myself and my own dating history, and one of my former boyfriends allowed me to interview him for this book, I know, great, right? I just decided that I would write about it so that people could, instead of hiring me at a reasonable hourly rate, they could pay like $3 or $4 and got the information that way.
Well, that totally makes sense. And I know, Duana, one of the things that I love about you, and I know my audience loves this too about you, is everything that you write about is science-based, right?
Yeah, absolutely. In my own search, found that I just didn't resonate with things that were opinion. And part of the reason why is opinions are sometimes right and sometimes wrong, but what none of them are is predictable. You can't take an opinion and predict with a certain percentage accuracy whether it's going to work out. You can with social science. And so I wanted to put the odds, in the words of Katniss Everdeen, ever in my favor. And so I decided to learn about science, and it's very, very helpful. I feel like people can hang their hat on this. It's not just my word against the word of, say, their friends or their family or their culture. This is what works for most people most of the time. And most of the time when I give advice based on science, it's science that's been affirmed multiculturally. So it's likely that it will work regardless of the background you come from.
Awesome. Awesome. So, okay, so let's jump into this. So, why is it sometimes that two people can be so in love with each other, but then the man pushes, let's use the man because my audience is all women, is the man is so in love with her, but then at a certain point, she feels like, oh my God, he's pushing me away and I don't understand. So can you explain to the ladies why that sometimes happens?
Oh, it's the classic bait and switch, right? Here's the bait, a wonderful relationship where we're super emotionally connected. And then there's the switch. Now I don't look up when you come into a room, and I might actually run away or make drama, I the guy, when things were actually going really well, leaving you questioning what just happened here. And I have so many letters from women who have this exact scenario. But the example I'm going to give today is from my own experience. I was dating this wonderful man who, I think in the book I call him Matthew, but that is not his real name. I always protect the identities of the guilty and the innocent. Anyway, he gave me permission to write this and to share this. And what happened with us was we just were firing on all cylinders. And for a couple months, everything was magical. And then, I mean, it wasn't just like it was magical because he was so into me or I was so into him, or it was just the chemistry. It was our values were aligned, our life goals were aligned. Like there was a lot of foundation there. We really liked each other. It wasn't just lust, but it was lust. It was great. And about 2 months in, he offered me his house key, and he gave me a bathrobe, and he hung it on a hook and said, you can come here anytime. Now, I got to admit, this was long enough ago that people did have cell phones, but they carried them with this over-the-shoulder bag that held the huge battery that was about yay big, and the cell phone itself was that big. It looked like a brick. So we didn't have cell phones. So the
Right.
idea here is I was just supposed to drop in on him.
Mm-hmm.
Or even if he wasn't home, he said, just come by. And I resisted that for a while. And then he kept saying, well, why aren't you taking me up on the offer? So I had some friends from out of town staying in my place. My place was not very large, and I thought, hey, now would be a good time to go see Matt. He didn't answer his phone. I thought, well, he's been urging me to do this. So I go to his house. He's not home. I draw myself a bath, get out a good book. I'm sitting on the couch near the front door with my hair up. I had hair then, reading my book. And he walks in and I beam at him beneficently and his face falls. He is clearly disappointed to see me. It was not what I was expecting. And then he said, "What are you doing here?" He went and packed an overnight bag and he left town.
What? That's a little dramatic.
This is an extreme reaction, but what we're dealing with here is men with what's called an avoidant attachment style tend to be very attracted to and attractive to women with an anxious attachment style. They tend to be drawn together and have a magical, I'm going to say 60 to 90 days, and then suddenly there starts to be drama. And there start to be problems that weren't there before, or things that they said weren't problematic, now they're complaining about. So for example, one of the examples in the book is a guy, again, I get permission for all my examples, but a guy who said that he had a big complaint that his ex-wife did not want to be sexual. So he got involved with this woman who was like, all right, I'm down all the time. And then his complaint was, well, you want it too much. Okay, there's no pleasing that guy, right? There's got to be problems with that guy. So what you're really looking at is a habitual way of being in intimate relationships. And that's what attachment styles are. They're the habitual kind of fallback pattern of the way we are in an intimate partnership. Everyone has one. It comes from when we're really little. Studies show that the attachment style you had when you were a year and a half old is probably about 70% odds the style you have right now. And it's mediated by both nature and nurture. Some of it is environmental. Some of it is genetic. And so, some people, 70% of people won the lottery, except the lottery wins are rare, and this is really common. 70% of people wound up secure, which means they kind of take it for granted that, of course, I'm lovable. And of course, my partner is going to love me about as much as I love them. And of course, my relationship is going to work out. And if it doesn't, well, that's really sad, but I'm going to grieve for a while, and then I'm going to move on. And I'm sure I'll find another good relationship. And that wasn't me. I did not have that faith. That sense of going through the world. I used to have a golden retriever, and golden retrievers go through the world confident that everyone loves them.
I'm laughing because I used to have a half golden retriever, and you're right. They are like the happiest dogs, and they are confident.
They just know,
Yeah.
They just know that everybody loves them. Well, I don't mean to compare people to dogs, because let's face it, dogs are better than people.
I thought you were going to say the opposite. That was very clever.
But dogs are better. I'm not comparing people to dogs really, but I am saying some people start life and continue life in this more optimistic place. And that optimistic place helps you, if you're in that percentage of people, it helps you to form a healthy, lasting relationship. And if it doesn't last, it helps you to grieve it, move on, and get into another one that really does last. It's extremely helpful. And yet, the other third of us aren't as lucky. We have either an avoidant attachment style, which comes in two flavors, which we'll talk about momentarily, or we have an anxious attachment style. Now, I'm anxious. I'll describe the anxious style, and what I want you to understand is most women who aren't secure are anxious. It's unusual to have a woman who's avoidant. Most non-secure women are anxious. So, anxious women feel that we love our partners more than they love us. We tend to think that relationships are not going to work out, even though we really want them to. We want this more than anything else. We just don't have much faith that it's actually going to happen for us. I would say most women in my client practice have some level of an anxious attachment. So, by the way, it's like the North and the South Pole. There are people in the world who live at the North or the South Pole, but not many. Most of us are somewhere in the middle. And that's the same if you're anxious. I'm not terribly anxious, but I'm somewhat anxious. I more live toward the equator on that one. So as you're listening to my examples. You might think, well, that might be too extreme, or it might not be extreme enough for your case, and that's fine. People don't have to neatly fit in the box exactly. But anxious people, one sign you might be anxious is, do you break up with the same person over and over? That's a sign of that. Kind of being in the relationship, but not all the way, looking to the past to continue finding your future, even though in the past there were really good reasons why you ended that relationship, but you keep going back to it. That's one of the signs.
Let me ask you a question about that, because something just popped in my head when you said that. So you said it can be where you break up with the same person over and over again, right? And then you keep coming back. Can it also be that you keep breaking up with different men, but at around the same point that they get too close or they get too far away, where you feel like you get a little anxious and then that same pattern repeats itself?
So that's a good question, because the anxious style, their anxiety is triggered not by a man who's getting too close, but by a man who's getting too far away. Picture yourself for a moment as an atom. You've got your nucleus, and then you've got your electron cloud, right? Secure people want their partner to inhabit the nucleus with them. They want you to be close.
Mm-hmm.
Anxious people, and they trust that you will be. And even if sometimes you go out into the cloud for a while, they just kind of trust that you're going to come back. They don't take that personally.
Right.
Anxious people want they're very similar to secure people in that we want that person to be in the nucleus with us. We want our partner to be in the nucleus with us. Where we differ is we don't trust that's really going to happen. We kind of flip out if you go out there in the cloud. And if you stay in the cloud, it feels very rejecting to us. Even if it's a totally not personal reason, it feels, one person told me it felt like being put in the freezer, put in the deep freeze. So it feels really, really bad, but it's very unusual for an anxious style person to be male. It's also very unusual for an anxious style person to find that they're anxious because somebody's too close.
Got it. So, which brings me to my next question, which I have a feeling this is where you're going, is does that mean that there's more men that are the avoidant attachment style?
Yeah, it's still 70% of men are secure, but of those who aren't, most of them are avoidant. What creates an avoidant attachment style is a combination of genetics, pre-birth environment, as far as we know at this point, which is nurture, even though your mom didn't pick that for you. It's still nurture because it's not, it's still nurture because it's not genetics. Mm-hmm. And then there's an aspect of just most of us have the same style that our mom had, or whoever our mom type person was. Our primary attachment figure is what the scientists would call that. So, if your mom or mom type person ran hot and cold, sometimes she paid attention to you, sometimes she didn't, sometimes she was very affirming, sometimes she was very cold. Most women respond to that by developing an anxious style. Most men respond to that by developing an avoidant style. And the avoidant style is further split into two what I call flavors or subtypes. One of these is avoidant dismissive. By the way, the term avoidant doesn't mean he avoids relationships.
Oh, can you go deeper on that?
I want to go deeper. Like, remember the atom analogy? Mm-hmm. So avoidant people, they want a partner. Here they are in the nucleus, but they don't want you in the nucleus. They want you in the cloud. You're in the electron cloud, orbiting. So my favorite statement that anybody ever told me about this is a guy who allowed me to quote him for the book. And he said, I had this girlfriend that she would come over and she would take a bath while I watched the game on television. And it was my favorite time of day because I knew she was there. I felt very secure and safe that she was with me, but I also knew that nothing would be asked of me.
Ooh, interesting.
The thing that avoidant men fear, or avoidant people fear, is having you try to get inside the nucleus with them, because that means you're going to ask things of them. And what if they can't deliver? They're terrified of not being able to deliver. And so this is what happens, as far as I can tell. And I don't know of any science that totally backs me up on this. This is my observation with anxious and avoidant people over many years of doing this. When an anxious man meets a secure woman, frequently she thinks, "Why are you trying to get so close so fast? I don't trust you." And she stops dating you.
Mm-hmm.
When he tries to date the anxious woman, she thinks, "Oh, finally, someone who's going to bring me into the nucleus and give me all the strokes and all the affirmation that I need right up front, because I don't really trust that someone's going to love me. So when you show so much availability right up front, I think, oh my gosh, this is wonderful. My life is made."
Mm-hmm.
What you don't know is at some implicit unconscious level, the reason he's showing you everything he can give you right up front is because he can't sustain it. He needs you to fall in love with him quickly because he can't have you in the nucleus for the whole time. He can only do that. Yet another person said, "I'm the perfect boyfriend for 90 days."
Oh my God. I just heard several women in my audience have this aha moment and go, oh my God. That's happened to me. So, Duana, this is interesting because now with the man who is avoidant, so he does that whole, what I'm going to call it a song and dance to get you to fall in love with him, right? And then you do within 90 days, and then you start entering the nucleus. I love this analogy, by the way. Is that when he gets freaked out and he starts to pull away?
Yes. And he can do it. It's amazing because I want to emphasize seems to be non-conscious. Men have hired me, many men have hired me to help them not be like this, and they have no idea why they're like this, and they don't feel like they're in control of it, and they're not planning it. They'll say, "It was the ideal relationship, and I've now realized I'm the perfect boyfriend for 90 days, and then I always do something that causes, I've realized I'm the problem." So it's not that these are mean-spirited men who are out to con you. They're not comfortable with sustained closeness. They do want you. I don't like the term avoidant because, okay, there are men who really are avoidant. The avoidant dismissive flavor is guys who just think relationships just aren't for me. I'm just going to hit it and quit it. Some people come, some people go, who cares? That's not who I work with. I wind up working sometimes for years with people who have an avoidant fearful style. Just like anxious people are afraid their partner won't be close enough. Avoidant people who are fearful that their partner is going to be too close. They're going to want to be in the nucleus all the time, and that they, the avoidant person, cannot deliver. Keep in mind, most of these people are men. They were all raised or almost all raised by women. They did not enjoy when their mother went cold on them for no reason. I remember one avoidant man that I interviewed. He's again give me he's actually no longer living. He gave me permission. He was a much older man. He was born in the Great Depression, and when he was only 7, he got 2 jobs and he bought his mother a radio. They were poor. They lived in a boxcar of a train, and it had a furnace at one end and it had a sheet hung across so the parents could have some privacy, and that was their home. And he, for $7, bought her a radio, and she looked at it and said, "What would I want with that?" And just turned around and went back to what she was doing. And that was a really important formative moment for him. He wound up being extremely fearfully avoidantly attached. He wanted women in his life, but he could not keep them in his life. He wanted it, but what would happen is he would come up, and he was very smart. He had a PhD. He would come up with all these elaborate ways to keep what I call closeness at arm's length. You can't be in the nucleus, but you can be out here at arm's length. That's where I want you. Please don't go all the way out. Don't leave the atom and like join somebody else's electron cloud. Stay with me. Stay with me, but please don't come in the nucleus very often because it's scary for me because you might do what she did.
But isn't that a part, because I love that example that you gave, because the impression that I got from that type of man and that experience is that he wants you close, but he's afraid that you're going to reject him, because that's a clear form of rejection from his mother. Here he is all excited, pleasing her and expecting her to praise him and say, "Oh my God, you're such a good boy. I so appreciate that." And now he feels like he can't make anybody happy, but he's also going to get rejected by somebody.
Yeah. The fear that avoidant men who are avoidant, fearful men have is, I can't ever really make a woman happy. And so they'll come up with these elaborate, they'll think to themselves, well, she's happy now, but it's not going to last. So what I'm going to do is, and again, I think this is mostly non-conscious. They'll do things like they'll pick a fight just when things are going well, or they'll start nitpicking you. They'll just start little criticisms. They'll just start dropping in when before, or they'll start criticizing something that formerly they liked, like oh, you want to have sex all the time? It's great. Oh, you want to have sex all the time? It's not so great. Same thing, they just feel differently about it now. Um, or they'll come up with reasons why you can't be together that are reasons that were there before you met. Like they'll say, well, but you're so close to your mom. Yeah, I was really close to my mom before we met, by the way. And I was really close to my mom the whole time we were dating, but now it's an issue. Nothing has changed. Or they'll create distance. You'll want to snuggle in bed, and they will suddenly turn away in a way that lets you feel rejected. They don't look, your pain is collateral damage. What they're trying to get is distance and safety. But that doesn't help you.
Right. But I think if women understand it better, it's when we don't understand things that it drives us crazy. Then we go down that rabbit hole of thinking too much and we make up stories in our head. So let me ask you a question, because I have heard this from a psychologist who knew about attachment styles, excuse me. And she said you can be a mix of attachment styles. Like you could start off as secure, and then as you get further into the relationship is then you can either turn anxious or avoidant or a combination of those two. And what are your thoughts on that?
That's absolutely true. There's something called earned security. Mm-hmm. And when I remarried, I was anxious. And over time, Vic and I developed a lot of earned security for me. I mean, he just so steady, so stable, so present. And even though I would say my default is probably still to have an anxious style, not with him.
Interesting.
There's a lot of trust. So yeah. So, even in really hard times, lots of trust, lots of basis for that. So yeah, people can morph. I've also talked to men in my practice who have said, I can take the most secure woman in the world and turn her anxious.
Wow. That's scary.
Not because I want to, but because if you're with me long enough, I do things that show that I'm not a person that you can be emotionally safe with. And I feel I'm quoting people here. I'm like making a composite of men who've talked to me. And they will say things like, I didn't realize until now that I have been doing things that are so emotionally unsafe that no woman, no matter how secure, could feel safe with me.
Wow. That's pretty powerful.
Because you can earn security and you can earn non-security.
Right. So now, Duana, what about, okay, let's take the scenario where the man's so in love with her, there's so much chemistry, everything's working out great, but then she gets too close, she gets into that nucleus, and he really does love her, but he starts to push her away, right? And then he breaks it off with her, right? And he tells her, I can't be in this relationship, I'm just not emotionally available. Or what he thinks
that's rare. I want to interrupt you and say that's rare.
Okay, what would a man say?
Avoidant men normally don't initiate a breakup. What they do is they behave so badly that you initiate the breakup.
Or do they disappear and just kind of fade away, and then you're left standing there going, I don't know what happened?
That could happen early in a relationship. That's very unusual later on in a relationship. If there's been a level of commitment there, now what you may notice is there's just an emotional detachment. But normally what happens, did you know 60% of divorces filed in most countries, including the United States, are filed in heterosexual relationships, they're filed by the woman?
No, now I do.
Yeah. So, and a lot of how that happens is the most common pairing that winds up divorced is an anxious woman with an avoidant man. It's called the pursuer distancer pattern.
Right.
And she's usually the one who files.
Right. Interesting.
She didn't get, she didn't get what she needed. It's very unusual. Look, avoidant, if we want to do a different analogy, imagine that you have a gas tank for love. You've got a love tank, and that if you're secure, your love tank is your standard 14-gallon tank. And if you're anxious, your tank is more like a Humvee. It's like 21 gallons or something.
Right.
And if you're avoidant, your tank is like a Vespa. It's like 3 gallons. Now, none of these people are wrong. Your tank is the size it is. It is what it is. It's not wrong to have a certain size tank, but you can see how if you have a 3-gallon tank and you're partnered with somebody who's got a 21-gallon tank, this partner, your tank's full. It doesn't strike you that your partner still needs more. In fact, when your partner says, I need more from you, you look at her like, but why? I'm cool over here. There's nothing malicious about it. There's nothing preconceived about it. Unfortunately, it doesn't feel that way. And so what happens is these guys, their tank is full, even with very little contact a lot of the time. So when they withdraw, they don't necessarily think, I'm going to end the relationship. You're going to end it because your tank is 21 gallons and you're driving on fumes all the time and it's making you really mad.
Got it. So now, though, let's take that scenario and he moves on to another woman, right? Will he just repeat the same pattern, or could the next relationship actually work for him?
In my experience, I've never seen an avoidant man become more secure in the context of his existing relationship. Not only that, but the people I've consulted with who do the same kind of work I've done that know a lot about attachment style, they all say the same thing. I don't know of any formal studies on that. I'm just telling you this is what we have observed. Now, does that mean he never forms this successful, what scientists would call pair bond? That depends. I mean, he might be with somebody who's so secure that she just kind of thinks, oh, that's just Ted being Ted. And she just doesn't take any offense. Maybe she's got her tank full from so many sources that it doesn't trigger her in any way. So maybe he'll find that scenario. I will say in my practice, what I see is men who are starting to realize that they are the common denominator and that this has been a pattern for them and that they could meet the perfect woman. They had told themselves for years, I just haven't met the right one yet. And now they've realized I met the right one many times and I always found fault until it turned the relationship into the wrong relationship. I suspect that for a lot of these men, if they're an extreme version, like a North Pole, South Pole version of, maybe if they're a mild version of avoidant, fearful, they can just find somebody secure and work it out. But if they're an extreme version, I suspect they're going to have to go to therapy about that. And there's a specific kind of therapy that really helps couples who are already in a relationship to, it won't necessarily change them. What it will do is it will help them understand each other so they're not upset and offended and feeling like it's personal. And it's called emotionally focused therapy, or EFT, which was started by Dr. Sue Johnson. That seems to work for about 2/3 of couples. But keep in mind, these couples aren't really dating. These are couples who've been together a really long time and are really committed to each other, where this pursuer distincer pattern is entrenched and they don't want to be in pain together all the time anymore.
Right.
I wouldn't advise you to go out and date someone where someday you're going to need EFT, is where I'm going with that.
Okay. And last question for you is, if a man starts to realize that he is avoidant, right? And like you said, there's men that do come to you and say, I realize that I'm this way. I really want to shift, right? And then you start working with them, which is great. But can a man do it on his own, or is it like he's in way over his head? Like he can't fix it on his own?
I don't know enough data on that. I know that changing an avoidant style changing any style is hard, but changing an avoidant style is harder. Anxious people, look, if you're anxious like I am, we anxious folks, we want what secure people are selling. We want to be in the nucleus and to have that faith that it's all going to work out. So if we partner with somebody secure, we can accept their leadership and eventually become more secure ourselves. and have a more even keel of stability of, oh, he just had a bad day. Like we'll give him a pass instead of thinking, oh my God, you don't love me anymore. My book has a couple letters I got from women who allowed me to reprint their letters, which are sad but funny at the same time, where this one woman says, the hardest thing for me was when my partner would come in the door at the end of a day and say, I just need to decompress for 15 minutes. And I would be like, oh my God, do you love me? Is everything okay? Do you want pie? Is blueberry still your favorite? She'd be freaking out because she was anxious.
Right.
For a partner who was secure, all he really meant was, I really need a few minutes to decompress. That's all he meant.
Yeah.
I would say if you are anxious, be with someone secure. Get my book, learn the signs of security, because I tell you, here's how secure men act when they're first dating you. Here's what they do. And look for those signs. And if you see those signs, keep dating them, even if you're bored. I want to emphasize that. If you're an anxious woman, you may find secure men to be too slow and too boring. One woman referred to this as her snail mail because he was so slow. He was a snail mail. And I said, hang in there. He really cares about you. The thing is, he loves you the way people love who have a secure style. It's not like Vulcan mind meld dating where you know everything all at once. They actually do things at a reasonable pace and get to know you as a friend and to see at a gradual pace whether they want more with you. It's crazy.
I know. That is so great. I'm glad you said that because I've had several clients ask me that. They're like, there's no chemistry and attraction, but he's so consistent. He shows up and acts in the way that I need a man to, but I don't get that quote unquote tingly feeling. So I'm so glad you said that. That's really,
patience,
really important.
young Padawan. Patience. I don't know why with all the sci-fi analogies today, but I'm not even that into it. But patience, just be patient. Look, my advice is you should be dating around anyway when somebody hasn't made a commitment to you yet. So keep dating around. And if he really wants you, he will continue coming to get you. And you can develop butterflies. In my second full-length book, which is Love Factually for Single Parents and Those Dating Them, plot spoiler, it's for everybody, not just single parents and those dating them. Like there's just a lot of information that didn't fit in the first book, so I put it in the second book. That's what happened there. What you see is this series of letters between me and a former client who is now happily married and has a baby and is delighted with her husband. And the first few letters I have from her, she's saying things like, I don't know, he's kind of short and he's kind of small. I'm not really attracted to him. And I just want him to be my friend. Like, he's so great, but I really can't imagine kissing him. And I don't have any butterflies at all. And I said, you have to date him again. I am twisting your arm. Go out with him because you talked for 6 hours till the restaurant closed. How often does that happen? Go out with him again. Look, if all he turns out to be is a friend. And then she said, and I want to say this for your audience too, because I found this to be pretty common. Well, I feel like I'm leading him on because I don't know if it's going to work out. That's what dating is for. It's for figuring out if it's going to work out. Don't jump the gun and preemptively end a relationship before you're really sure. I said your intuition has been honed by millennia of your foremothers. Let your intuition guide you. It will tell you definitively either yes or no. And until it does, your job is to keep going out with the guy. And I have a letter in the book that's sent 2 months after the letter where she said he was too small and she just wanted to be friends and all that, where she says, and this is a quote, I've never felt butterflies like this before. Same guy. He's secure.
Aw, I love that story.
So she had only gone out with avoidant men and this secure man adores her and her life is great.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up because it's the same thing with my clients. I hear the same things from them. So, Duana, this has been awesome. So how can the ladies find you?
Well, if you go to lovefactually with an F.co, you will find me and you'll find free chapters from all my books and you'll find all my books and you'll find a link to not just coaching with me, but another website that's all my articles and podcasts and everything. So there's lots of information there. I just want to send you one place and that's it.
Awesome. Awesome. Again, it's lovefactually.co. There's no M on it. I think a lot of people get that mixed up. So not .com, .co. Okay, perfect. So thanks everybody for joining us on the It's Never Too Late show. My show is available both in video and podcast format, which can be found at Your Next Amazing Story. And if you would like to get my free video series, The Secrets About Men After 40 and Beyond, you can click right here on the video, or you can go to yournextamazingstory.com.